Nick, you're our only viewer. Can you hear us? Will you let me know? Nick, I saw your hand go up. Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Just make sure you can hear. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Seriously? Yep. Yeah. Really? That's awesome.
Go ahead and call this meeting to call the meeting to order. For the record, it is Thursday, September 30th, 2021 at 5:32 p.m. for a special joint meeting of the Meridian City Council and Meridian Library District Board of Trustees. We will begin the Meridian City Council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton.
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Councilman Byrne.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. You guys need to take roll, or do you do that verbally, or?
We certainly can. We will call to order with roll call. Jeff Fuller, Christina Hirsch, Laura Knudsen, Tyler Ricks, and I'm Megan Larson.
Next up is adoption of the agenda. Councilman Byrne.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. You take any similar action? Are you good? Only if you need to, for your open meeting versus ours. Perfect. All right, then with that, we will just. Our action items for the evening. Item 1, Meridian Library Facility Levy and Capital Project.
Gretchen and I.
Okay, do you want to do it? Okay, we can do introductions real quick. Where would you like to start? Down here, Tyler?
My name's Tyler Ricks. I just recently got a
Tyler, which section of town do you represent, or the district?
I'm Megan Larson. I'm chair of the Meridian Library Board. I've been on the board for 7 years now. And I'm at Fairview and Locust Grove.
I'm Laura Knudsen. I've been on the board since June and Locust Grove in McMillan.
I'm Christina Hirsch. I've been on the board for 5 years, I think.
And I'm Jeff Fuller, been on the board for 2 years, and I live in Southern California.
Testing. Oh, good. I'm Gretchen Casserati. I'm the library director here in Meridian.
Robert Simpson, Mayor of Meridian.
That's President Trey Burnt.
I'm Brad Hoagland. I'm midterm in my first term back, served in 2000s or early 2000s. And, live in Northwest Meridian, and I like libraries.
Governor, I'm coming to the end of my second term, and I live in South Meridian.
Liz Strader, and I'm about halfway through my first term.
All right, we will continue with agenda item number 1.
Alrighty, thank you, Mayor. So we thought we'd just start talking about our plant facility level and capital projects. Oh. I could do it without the slides.
I love libraries.
Start there too.
Love them.
I'm hitting the arm, the leg of it.
No, 1992 summer reading champion, Meridian Library. Competitive reading. Competitive reading.
Sorry about that. We'll just, so just for those of you that may not know, the City of Meridian Library or City of Meridian boundaries and the Library District boundaries do not line up. The blue is the City of Meridian currently, and the red is the Meridian Library District. And that kind of feels the area of impact. So our western boundary is Canyon County. We bump into the Ada Community Library District boundaries or branches are the south. Ada Community Library again, and the Keno Library District, of course, Boise. So this was formed by the voters in 1974 as an independent. laws that are most similar to the school district. And of course, the libraries are permits of the city and they're under those rules. So here in Idaho, it's a mix of both, and it can be a little bit confusing for residents when those boundaries don't quite line up and those rules don't quite line up. It's not uncommon for folks to assume that we are. So this map is our current and planned locations. You can see there our Cherry Lane branch, the existing branch, and then our newest location, Unbound, there in green. And then down towards the bottom of the map in green is the tiny library location. That's a little shipping container. The other locations shown there are our upcoming branch at Orchard Park on Linder and Chinden up at the top of the map, our South Meridian library location. Context for the Ada Community Library that are nearby. So in 2019, we passed the plant facility levy $14 million total funding measure, and we're planning 4 capital projects with that over a 10-year period. Those 4 planned projects are the Unbound building renovation, our new branch in Northwest Meridian, that Orchard Park location, and then a South Meridian location, which will replace our Silverstone branch, which is the leased facility renovation of our Cherry Lane location. We keep the projects updated on our website, mld.org, putting the milestones of the project, including the public. We're conducting surveys in those neighborhoods where those locations are. We get that feedback, recruit members of the community for focus groups, provide input on the library, which we found tremendously helpful in planning. And we'll also have town hall events as those designs progress. Our completed project is the Unbound renovation. We've purchased this building using new construction funds in 2019 and started renovations in 2020. We're due to the pandemic. We're very proud of this building. I think it's not great. Came in under budget, which is always a good thing for us, clearly. And the building opened to the public in April of 2021. I think most of you have been over there to see it, but definitely come by if you haven't. Look forward to taking a walk over that way.
Okay, I'll take over from here because I am mired in the details of the next 2 capital projects at the moment. Orchard Park was scheduled to be our second capital project funded by the plant facility levy. Running a little behind schedule, as Megan mentioned, many things are related to the pandemic. It was formerly called Linder Village, now is renamed Orchard Park. This is in the northwest corner of Meridian, where we had the highest density of library card holders who supported prior attempts to pass funding measures. We identified this area of town as a very high need and in high demand. And working with the developer, had an opportunity with this project to lease a space. So the building itself is owned and being built by the developer, the core and shell, and we will do the tenant improvements. Obviously with a non-appropriation clause, but we have a long-term commitment on this project with an option to purchase the building at the end of the 20-year lease agreement. So they worked with us, especially because this is a retail commercial area development, and libraries are not necessarily the same in their function. And the developers were really great to work with us on the design of the core and shell. And it turned out to be a pretty complex project with a lot of people involved, different architects, different construction companies, but we have persevered through this project and are really proud of the design of the library space, which actually, Chris, move to the next one. Our architects that we work with really took a holistic approach to the design of this branch, from the ground that it sits on, the area that it's in, and the design aesthetic incorporates all of the natural elements from the environment. So the built environment will feel connected to the natural environment in this space. You'll notice on this image, the aesthetic from the ceilings of our great and beautiful big skies to the hint of the columns of basalt canyons along the Snake River Canyon. The found objects on our earth, the flowers, the plants, the rocks are these objects in the space, and then the ground itself being a high desert, sandy, natural earth ground. If we can advance to the next one. That also incorporates our palette for what will be the furnishings. We're not quite there yet. We are still working on our furniture package. The colors, the textures, all of those are also related to that natural environment. What's really exciting though is the design of the branch. Obviously a little hard to see here, but we wanted to kind of give you a sneak peek to what will be in this branch, because this branch is going to have a lot of features that don't exist in other libraries in the area, or certainly not in Meridian. Through our process of including public input, which was challenging during the pandemic, we had some really great focus groups with residents, really from all over the valley, but also in the neighborhood. We really worked with special groups of our residents to get feedback on what is missing, what don't we have, and where could a library fill that gap? Does it make sense? The biggest message we heard is the lack of spaces for people with disabilities. The lack of spaces that are truly accessible to people with different abilities, whether that's sensory processing disorders, deaf and hard of hearing, blind populations, and mobility issues. As our architect likes to say, we're all, how does she word it? We're able-bodied today. We may not necessarily be every day. So we took from those focus groups an eye to this branch to really design it with accessibility in mind in all its spaces. And that has, instead of just what started with an idea of having a sensory room for kids when we have story times, for example, and a child that may have a sensory processing disorder needs a place to kind of go calm down and soothe themselves. So we know that we're starting to see that trend in libraries, and that's sort of where the germ started. And then it expanded to, well, as your kids get older, and if they have disabilities that require them to use the facilities in different ways, there are very few public facilities where a restroom is accessible to an older person with disabilities, for example. So our restrooms have been designed to have benches that can be sanitized for families that might need to use the facilities in that way. So I'm really excited about how this space will be inclusive for all people, but with particular eye toward those communities that I just mentioned. For most people who use the library, they, oh, this is the feedback one. One thing that we heard loud and clear is that people really want convenience of access. And we learned through this pandemic that self-serve is something that people also like, being able to kind of use things on their own terms. So this library branch, you'll notice on the lower corner, actually has a drive-up book return, which the developer was able to work out on the site. That was quite a challenge, but we managed to figure it out. And then on the east side of this building, we're going to have a 24-hour holds pickup. So it's an area where, just like a bank teller, where you can swipe your bank card to get in to the ATM lobby, you'll swipe your library card and be able to come and pick up your holds if you work until 10 o'clock and you can't get there when the library closes at 8. So we're really trying to incorporate those conveniences of access for the residents, especially since this will be on a high traffic corridor off of Chinden. Thank you, Chris. So the building itself is actually going up, and yeah, it's so long. It's been so long in the works. We are behind schedule on this one, and we'll be fighting tooth and nail to keep us on budget as much as possible, which is not easy right now. Right now, if we can keep that schedule, we're looking at doing the tenant improvements starting in March, and we'd be able to open later in 2022. Don't have a date yet, but we should have that in the next couple of months when a project schedule actually materializes for us. And then the second project is the South Meridian branch. So to take a step back, this is also many, many years in the works. Back in 2014, we started working with the city, the YMCA, St. Luke's, and the Hillsdale Elementary, the West Ada School District, for a vision of a co-located project at the Hill, which is off of Eagle and Amity Roads. Many things have changed since 2014. Leadership has changed, the community has changed and grown. And through a lengthy process from when we proposed this branch to where we are today, over the last year, our board has grappled with how to approach this project now that we have funding, but there are many complications to this site that we had no control over and have tried to figure out if we could fulfill that commitment to build a branch at this site, a 15,000 square foot branch with an $8 million budget. And after 9 months, I want to say it was, we concluded that we could not afford to build. And with the complications of that site, we could not deliver on that promise. And so with that, we worked with the Y and the partners and informed kind of where we were at with that, and set forward to find another location that we could build a 15,000 square foot full service library branch in that area of town for the resources that we have. Anyone watches our board meetings, Megan will continuously say, we have a fixed budget. The money is not going to increase. This is what we have. We have a hard line when it comes to that with the resources. We're very excited. Through this process, we have been able to make some progress, and we are really going public, I guess, with this meeting. That we have identified a new site in South Meridian, and through a generous donation of land, Brighton Corporation has agreed and offered to donate a parcel of land for us off of Lake Hazel and Locust Grove in their Pinnacle subdivision. So Christy can show, yeah. So they had already planned to have a community center on that project. And for a few months now, we've been working with them to figure out how we could incorporate a public library and a public community center in a shared space down the road from Discovery Park. And obviously you are all very familiar with that area. So through this process, we're on target because the land is being donated, because the land will be build ready for us. It brings a tremendous value for us to be able to fulfill that commitment to have a 15,000 square foot branch as we committed. And the next slide, Chris. And we're very early in our design process. So there is still a lot of things to work out, but there's a lot of promise in having this plaza, a connection between. Project has an amphitheater planned, which we'll be able to use for programming spaces, story times outside, and work with community partners to deliver programs and services in this area. So we are in the design stages now. We're about to initiate a public communication input plan where we have surveys, focus groups. We'll have town hall meetings planned with the architects, the residents. We'd love to have one-on-ones with people to get feedback and input as we design that branch, and hopeful that just like with the North branch, we'll get that great feedback that's really going to shape how this branch will operate and what it has to offer. Next slide. This is just a snapshot. We're very early, as I said, in the design stages, but this sort of just gives a different view of the promise of having the coffee shop from the cafe next door to be able to go and grab a coffee and bring your kids to story time, and then gather with your friends out in the park afterwards. And then the fourth and final plant facility levy project is the Cherry Lane renovation. The building opened in 1996. We've had no meaningful work really since then, a couple of Band-Aids here and there. But it was built for a city of 40,000 people, which clearly we've far exceeded. It is our main library, so some of what bursts at the seams is it's our outreach, it's our technical services, it's our IT, our whole library tucked into there. So The remaining plant facility levy funds will be dedicated toward the renovation, and then we will, our plan is to exhaust our capital repair and replacement fund. So we're throwing every dime, every dollar in the kitchen sink at this project, which right now is scheduled for 23 design, 24 to open, which is the library's centennial. 100-year anniversary is 2024. And so all of that is funded with this plant facility levy. With the cost of construction rising 10% year over year, you are all very aware of the challenges that we're faced with shortage on labor, shortage on materials, and the demands and the strains from what we projected in 2018 to where we are today have certainly put some pressures on these projects. Since 2019, we also created a library foundation, a nonprofit that is dedicated to do capital fundraising. We will also be making some really big, exciting announcements about progress that they're making to help us close some of those gaps. You'll see that we'll be launching a capital campaign to help offset some of these challenges for the next 3 years to consolidate the efforts to fundraise for those projects. There's lots of ways people can help. I appreciate the one social media platform I'm on that many of you helped to share and broadcast some of those messages. We really appreciate that. And we'll be looking for people to get involved, whether that's on a design focus group, or if you are interested in or know someone that we should talk to who would be good on a capital campaign committee. We're continuing to build those relationships and try to keep supporting these projects so that we don't have to keep coming back to the taxpayers for more funding measures in the future. In the long-term future, our goal with the foundation is to be able to self-sustain maintenance of our facilities, that we can fundraise, eventually get to the place where we could have an endowment and really be able to self-support future maintenance of these buildings.
So we'll just wrap up what's next for us. And we're familiar with needs to grow, and Richard touched on in a number of ways we're resource constrained. We're looking for creative ways for us to continue to meet the needs of our community. Always looking for opportunities to partner. We'll be doing an update of our master facility plan.
Questions? If you have them, just go ahead and pick up and talk. You don't need to go through the chair. Evening.
That's a lot. That's really a lot. Amongst all of the air.
Sure, the Meridian Police Department would love to see some improvements related to that. ACHD thankfully did install a crosswalk this last year. So we're grateful to see kids actually using the crosswalk instead of running across the road. We know it needs to be addressed. We have the challenge of a property kind of in between where we own those two kind of angle sides of that. So we have the intentions of trying to figure out how to do it and hope that our engineers are geniuses. But one possibility, for example, could be if we turn the main entrance from facing the street to the side, and we can rezone and address the parking to enter from the other side, we might be able to redirect the flow. So we've got some ideas, but we're not far enough along in the process.
Just a comment. I know that a lot of your funding principles are in alignment with the school district funding principles in your state statute. I know there's maybe an effort this year to look at impact fees for schools. I don't know if that would carry over to libraries through the statute provision. If not, you may want to look into that to see if that would be something to be appropriate for libraries as well, with the constraints that you have, quite frankly, more than anybody else, as far as I'm concerned. So.
Thank you. I'll look into that. it would be nice.
Well, excellent.
Mr. Mayor, still one last question. What's Hillsdale Elementary doing for the library now?
Great question. I'm sorry I didn't speak more to that. So back in 2017, I think it was, they moved into and took over the space that was originally going to connect to the library, and they built their library in that space. So they have had a school library since 2017. We funded and staffed a full-time librarian in that school. Her name is Maria, and she worked at this school as their librarian for 2 years. And then after something happened, I forget what it was now. It's been so many years. We ended up having Maria come back and work at the library, and she does outreach to the whole school district now. She helps write curriculum, supports the librarians in the elementary school, But in 2018, we opened it. The tiny library is what we installed on that site. So that was never really part of the long range plan. And so now we'll be able to keep the tiny library on site there. And we've talked a little with the Y. We may see if we can add some detail to that, maybe move it on the site when they do their parking lot improvement. But our intention now is that we'd have 2 libraries down in that area by keeping the tiny library there. So the school has had their own number of years. Have to let me address that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it is just a tag about it. Put the 8 minutes on it.
Amaze me what you do with the resources that you have. I know you react really well to COVID. Library to everybody, no matter where they were at. Curbside pickup is amazing. Home delivery is amazing. Hopefully one day COVID will be in the rear mirror. They're an attention to continue those services.
Yes to all of those things. But things like home delivery, we launched with that in mind, that we would continue, because let's be real, our population is going to continue to grow exponentially, and our resources are not going to grow. And so we can't build branch libraries every 3 to 5 miles in this city. It's just not financially possible with the tools we have and the constraints we have. So home delivery feels like an opportunity for us to continue to find different ways to serve people's needs with that convenience in mind. We have always had a home delivery program. It was just really specific to seniors who were covering some surgery and can't get to the library. And so it's now our goal is to figure out how to kind of fill the space between these 2 programs. One is broad for anyone and everyone. One is resources that go towards finding books for those people, spending time to build relationships. So when the home delivery driver comes by, like your Amazon driver, hi, how are you? Here's your package, versus somebody who might come and sit and visit, homebound and isolated. And that's been really important to keep going during this pandemic too. And it sort of happens behind the scenes. I'm not sure that people know that those are services that the libraries have been providing years way prior to COVID, because it's so personal. So our goal right now is to just figure out the best way to be efficient with those, so that and we've been the only library open since June of 2020 consistently. And how can we continue to be efficient so that we can keep offering those in-person and outreach.
Just chat a little bit about service hours of that little library. Asset selfishly, it's a very popular choice for my 5-year-old to recognize it is a small footprint that obviously has a large staff. Maybe what's the programming side of that facility?
I can certainly speak to that. That is, the hours were derived based on when the school and the Y also have their programming and services to that target population. It is staffed by the library employees across the district. And so we knew that, especially heading into certain seasons, like now, we have a lot of absences. We really had to go back to be able to. We'd like to get to a point where we get back to, with tiny libraries in particular, being able to have expanded hours. And I think by the time this new branch opens down the road, that'll strain off of those hours. Full service branch will be open 60 hours a week, 7 days a week. So that's the goal with that, but it's been pretty tough to get people to be able to get down there. The occupancy is 6.
It is. No, and certainly there was a vision of I recognize the limitations. I don't think there's not anybody in this room that didn't want to have that full experience. But I appreciate it. I think something the library does really well is when challenges arise, you as an organization, government responds to challenges. You guys have been very forward thinking, responsive, and I think that tiny library is a great example. To the point that when it's not open and available, it feels like, and I recognize it. I don't want you to feel like it's a criticism. Just know that you've got great cheerleaders in South Florida for that. Obviously.
Good advantage of having SHRAP Grant. We also, from a staff perspective, we're going to have staff that can come closer to more community and a larger team in a full service. Lila. On that note, actually, I neglected to mention with the Cherry Lane renovation here, one of the intentions of that design, the remodel, as well as what we'll discuss on the agenda tonight, is that we will be building in a small space in there, a room, a history center room, exhibits, computers, and provide some of that resource for the local history archive. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, but that project will go alongside the Cherry Lane.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 2. And I'm going to turn this over to Cameron.
Members of council and the members of the library board, it's a pleasure to be with you. Cameron Ariel, Community Development Director for the City of Meridian. We thought it would be helpful for the discussion just to provide an update kind of on the city, the growth in the city, and, at least provided some additional context to, the mutual plans around that. What you're looking at in this slide is the number of units that we've seen year over year, and in what locations. And let me actually, this may be helpful. Let me skip back real quickly, share one other screen that actually defines these areas a bit more so you can see that from a map. This map here kind of gives you that visual. So you have starting top left, Meridian Northwest, Meridian North, Meridian Northeast, Meridian West, downtown, Meridian East, and then Meridian Southwest, and Meridian Southeast. That kind of gives you that quick visual. But then skipping back, just to give you the raw numbers, this is kind of gives you the unit count for what we're seeing in the community right now. You can tell that there's been some pretty dramatic growth in those top three lines, and we'll call them Meridian Southeast, Meridian West, and Meridian North. You can also kind of note there that there's somewhat of a decline in each, but at the same time, very robust growth across the city. And then if we show some of that growth on the map as well, let me just click over to that. So this is the year over year, and you can see down in the legend here, 2016, and then getting lighter to 2021, where these pockets of growth are occurring. You do see we have a fair amount of infill growth just in the city proper, but where there's massive growth and where the bulk of that's occurring is on the rims here, particularly in the south, southeast, southwest, and then up here in the Meridian North, Meridian Northwest area. So also noteworthy in this map is what we call the active zones. So where maybe the units, the permits haven't been pulled, but where we have active hearing level applications in process as we speak. So you can see that kind of with this, I apologize, I'm colorblind. So I think it's a light yellow dashed line areas. So, and then kind of lastly is just to give you a little bit of a unit type view of this. Let me share that here. So this map shows you, again, the approved since 2010, or excuse me, 2020, the single family, and then the multifamily. So just differentiating between household type. So you can kind of get a sense for our growth patterns as it pertains to unit type. I will say just on this note, there is a perception that multifamily is very prevalent in our community, and that would be accurate. Year over year, we have seen more multifamily units coming in, and that's even true just here in downtown. But that being said, our single family continues to be very robust. So just want to kind of lay that perception and provide a little bit more clarity to that by no means are we doing more multifamily on a pro rata basis than we are single family. Hopefully that just gives a taste, and quite frankly, I think it aligns pretty well with where your growth is. And as a member of the Meridian North Northwest area myself, I'm very excited about the Orchard Park project and just what that means for this incredible growth that we're seeing here and the patrons in that area. And of course, your future plans down here in the south, I think, is right on target for the future there. But again, with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have, and again, just provide that additional context for you all.
And Cameron, maybe if I could add to it, I think some of the things that point out, especially on the western boundary, the areas that are in white and below the interstate, a lot of that needs, in order for that to change, there has to be a sewer line installed in that area and go underneath or go to the interstate and serve that southwestern portion. And that is likely not to see any activity of significance for 4 to 7 years, especially getting underneath the interstate or the interstate to the south. And then it will have to go slowly for the most part as development pulls it through that standpoint. So I think that you would have a good 10 to 15 years before you see any sort of significant development in the southwestern part of that white part of our community for planning purposes. sooner than that for the part to the north of the interstate, definitely. Before you'd see more development push that direction.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, just for the library's edification as well, we are actively doing what's called a sub-area plan in the north, the north west area. We call it the Fields area, sub-area plan. And so that is a location that, to the mayor's point, there is a plan for extending utility and growth. But again, that's a future conversation.
Any questions?
That change the timeline?
Yeah, the underground is the driving factor for that, but we are working on an agreement with ACHD and ITB to do the design of winter overpass. And so we hope to get a design so that when funding comes available, it can be built as soon as possible. But timeline for construction has not been identified.
City looks at additional higher pieces of parks or opportunities that oh, yeah. Smaller spaces.
There's always opportunities, potential opportunities. Steve said, "Where's your man?" Yeah, I think from from a police and fire perspective, yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of, we haven't purchased property from in other areas from where we already are just putting things. Parks, we have a lot of the land, but I think the Southwest, that's probably an area still for discussion. You know, there is a regional park that's planned around, you thinking Black Cat, where am I in the right place for like in that area? Then the other one is up way north on the river. Those are kind of our big park areas. But as Cameron mentioned, the Northwest is looking at what the parks are going to be, but the Southwest, I think, still has some defining to do.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, and Gretchen, it sounds like you guys are starting a new revamp of your master facilities planning. I would strongly encourage that we partner on that, and you know, certainly would be a resource to you all, but then also in our own planning, you know, have that be a joint effort so that we're targeting what you need us to, and zoning and so on. So. All right.
Mr. Mayor. It seems like out of the areas that we have not formally adopted. Southwest area is not Fields area is actively being planned to a greater level of detail than we typically see. It seems like that would be a really good area. A lot different than our usual. A lot proactive in terms of putting parks and putting a lot of
Boundaries end.
So Gretchen, I'm curious. So like the Fields District, we're annexing, that's going to be a high growth area. It's going to be kind of an island out there without library service, it sounds like, or it's just from when you're a resident of Meridian, the likelihood is you think, oh, I can use the Meridian Library, and so that's kind of one of those confusing things.
Well, the partnership allows anybody to use.
Right, right.
Does it make sense at all, Tanner, to try to adjust your boundaries working with them? For example, in that nice square 4-mile area? Or is it not that easy?
We could, the director.
I think to the point, we know that area is going to be separated from Meridian because of the Highway 16. It's going to be its own almost separate, unique space that is going to, you still have roads getting there, but that is part of the reason why we're doing that extra effort of planning. And so it makes sense for you all to consider looking at bringing in an area as part of Meridian for service. That might be one area for you to really look at, consider. With that, item 3. Thank you, Cameron.
Presentation number 2. Me again. So our next item to fill you in on where we're at with things is our collaborative project with the city and the now former Historical Society. You all had approved, as did the library board, the agreement for us to take ownership of the History Center's collection, and we are initiating a digitization project. I'm going to give you some updates on where we're at with all of that. We have 3 of our staff who have been working really hard on this project, and we have a lot of really good news to share of all the things that have been happening behind the scenes. Go ahead, Chris. So a couple of updates since you signed the agreement. Even the Historical Society has officially folded as their own independent nonprofit. Way back when we discussed keeping the nonprofit status, but that was before the library created the foundation. So we do have a 501c3 arm now, and that has been beneficial because we have been successful in some of our grant seeking for this project, which I'll tell you about in just a minute. So one of the things we've done since that agreement is our staff have gone in and completed the inventory the Historical Preservation Commission had started, and we picked that up. We've been meeting with and trying to fill that in a little bit more in working with Lila, getting a little more detail on what some of those objects are, making notes of where there's some special information that didn't make it to the spreadsheet, trying to kind of round out that inventory a little bit more. So, and then part of that process of looking at the inventory is trying to identify ownership provenance? Where did it come from? Is it an original or a copy? As we just discovered recently with the photos in the frames, that those were actually copies, not original. So that's important for a digitization project to understand who owns it and who has permission and what you can and can't do with the objects themselves. So we have finished evaluating that. We have established, we had shared in an early draft with the partners, what our criteria would be for this collection. And what we're looking at now is the feasibility. What's the condition of the objects? Is it something that we will keep? Is it able to be digitized? And we've been working to build a catalog. One of the challenges of the History Center as it's been is there's no, Lila is the catalog.
Right.
She is the catalog. So we've been evaluating options. It's true. And planning some space redesign. So some of the things in that space now is light and air quality are starting to erode the quality of some of those objects. And so we want to preserve them and we want to make sure that they're cared for. And that might mean moving them in the space or making replications and then moving the originals into a place that can be more preserved. We applied for some grants that we got, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So this is just a little snapshot of kind of what we're looking at here for a physical collection and a digital collection. The things that we're thinking about and concerned about, I just mentioned some of that for preservation, and things that won't meet our long-term space for the collection criteria. I'm just going to say it's things like the horse that are in pretty poor condition. We'd love to work with the City Preservation Commission, community partners to help find homes for those objects. Those are not things that the library is going to be able to continue to care for. And digitizing that will be a challenge, but we can take a great photograph for the collection. So just sort of a snapshot of the things that are important to this process and this project. Things like the metadata creation, how much goes into the files in the back end so that those things can be findable and searchable, whether somebody's doing genealogy research or a school project or writing a novel and they want to research. So looking at all that stuff is on the back end of this project. Go ahead, Chris. So this fall, the 3 grants that we were awarded are through the Humanities Council. You can go to the next slide, Chris. Oh, Allison, what does SHRAP stand for again? I can't remember what the acronym's for. They were through ARPA funding that went through the Idaho Humanities Council. I can't remember the acronym. So we applied for and were successful with these 3 grants, which I'll walk through quickly. One of them, the Idaho SHRAP Grant, required a match. And that is for us to fund a digitization lab. So this is through the National Historical Publications and Records Commission. Oh, here it is, Idaho State Historical Records Advisory Board. That's why I can't remember it. So that will be allowing us to get some equipment and establish the lab. And that will be part of what we'll be doing the actual digitizing with. Go ahead and go forward. That's that one. That was a 2,300 or 5,000 grant, roughly. And then this next slide is a picture of the type of equipment that that's going to purchase, which is cameras, scanners. Just go ahead one more. There you go. The actual computer. We'll set these up in the History Center so that we can start doing the work. First upstairs, then downstairs. As we move things around, things will move between those 2 things. So the grant covers all of the equipment as well as 1 year of the software to get it all up and going. Next slide. The next grant was a SHRAP Grant, which is sustaining humanities through the American Rescue Plan. That came through the National Endowment for the Humanities. There we go. And this one is a $15,000 grant for paying for a position. So I was just talking earlier about how we are resource constrained with staffing. This will allow us to actually pay someone to just do this project. And we are writing the job description that the board will see at the next meeting in October. Things are moving along pretty nicely there. The SHRAP Programs Grant is the third grant that we got, also through the American Rescue Plan and the Humanities Council. And this grant is going to fund the design, creation, and production of interpretive panels. So another way that we can preserve some of those objects that may be in poor condition in a display case, to digitize them and then put them in context in a way that's visually appealing and can tell a story of this community. And then these panels will be installed in here for the sort of next phase here. And that will help visitors to the space kind of not just see an object, but understand how that object fits into the context of the time, the place, the environment. What's that? Like a horse. The panels as well, we're eventually when we get to the History Center being at the main library, we'll be able to move those objects. So we had a long-term eye toward the use of those funds, so they can be moved with the History Center when we do it. And then the next slide is the immediate next steps for us. So we need to spend that money and get the equipment, get the job description written, and get the work started. We also want to get going on finding homes for the things that we can't keep or won't make it to Cherry Lane in the next couple of years. And then over the winter, I mentioned we'll be actually designing the interpretive panels. Our plan at this moment is to, we kept talking about this, figuring the best way to do it is to just paper, the History Center is not open right now anyway. The History Center volunteers have not been able to come for a long time. And at this point, we're planning to paper it over as a remodel and then do the work and then reopen with like a grand opening in the spring. The idea is that then that space can be open whenever City Hall is open. And visitors don't have to wait for somebody from a volunteer for that space, but rather the volunteer here can just open that and be part of when City Hall hours front of by the public. That is the idea at the moment for that project and kind of where we're at. And then the last slide, Chris, is a couple of things that we could use some help with. Oh, sorry, one more. I plowed through that. Continuing to work with Bill, who's left now, but and the staff that have been working with us the last couple of months to make sure we can get access. That has sometimes been a challenge with coordinating everybody's schedules without being able to get into the basement and things. And then we'll work together with the city to promote what's happening and work with the volunteers, like I mentioned, so that that space can be open and accessible instead of just being closed. That was it. Yes. And then Jenna Lee is our digital service librarian. She used to work at the State Archives. She's got a lot of experience with this type of work and really driving this project. Allison, our communications manager, and our material services manager have also been helping. I'm happy to answer your questions. I am the one who signs the grant application. I am not digitizing the equipment, but that's sort of where we're at with the project, and definitely a long, multi-year project. The district is fully committed to ensuring that we preserve and make available this wonderful collection that we have. All have seen the value and share that commitment to saying that our local history is important. And our skills and our resources, we can digitize it. And so does anyone have any questions?
I just want to start by saying thank you. I mean, this may be one of the projects, you know, I've been working on for
Like ever.
6 to 10 years, it seems
Yeah.
like, where the initial conversation started. And I just, you know, I want to say thank you for the library district in terms of taking on this role for preserving our community's history. I think when we looked at what makes sense, you know, the library is the best place to store and keep that type of material that's accessible to the community. And my personal thank you. And I know it's been you've made it, I think, a great friend in the process with Lila through this project. And I know that you'll do it proud for her and the Emergency Historical Society.
I have a question about the large artifact. First of all, second of all,
Household.
yeah, well, I'm just wondering if we're trying to rehome some things, I'm wondering. Use the rehoming process as a way to raise money, so auction those items off, for example, and then use those funds to help support maintenance of really displaced. Like how you do. I think cool connection there. The original Victory School Bell was down there for years. Middle school, that was a natural way to bring this thing out of a basement, but still keep it here and have it be in a place. That's kind of what we're thinking of some of the projects. That's a great example of keep it here, but get it out of the basement, right? So that
Is there a list of what those large objects are, some of those things that might be,
Other than the horse. Yeah.
other than the horse, yeah?
There's a loom, although I think the loom is Lila's. So that was another part of that inventory, was to understand if it belongs to Lila or somebody else. And so we do have a list. I don't know off the top of my head what else on it, but they did identify like that. So at some point we talked about coming to the Preservation Commission and kind of sharing, these are the things that we would like to work with you to find. It'll be coming soon now that we're at this stage. So, and then, this is all for the library and the city and the history of our community. When we go over to Unbound, one of the activities that we thought would be fun to do is moving into that oral history space, capturing these moments, and also showing you all some of the equipment that we have there that's accessible for people in their homes to do their own digitizing. For my generation, I have a basement with a box full of VHS tapes of high school plays and things we've done. And
For those.
So Unbound has a lot of that kind of equipment where people can come in and preserve their own histories. And we've had some success stories already where Victor helped a woman who came in who wanted to just do a memorial, like to digitize these videos of her grandmother who had passed away. And then in working with our Unbound staff member, Victor, she ended up producing this high quality memorial video where she scanned images and had video clips and voiceovers and music and took this one simple act and turned it into this really meaningful project of family history preservation and memorialize the cost of their loved ones. And so it's just we thought that would be another way to just show you some of those things that Unbound has for the community, for our own personal family. So feel free to reach out to us, anytime, and we'll follow up about the list. They're all going to end up at Borton Lakey down the street.
I heard. I'll be happy to make a bid on.
I was thinking maybe more in one of our urban renewal projects, to make it more like a jump. Just put a horse in the side of the building where tractors are, jump, same concept. Well, I don't know if that fits our design guidelines, but we'll see. With that, council, your meeting topics. Then do I have a motion to adjourn? Or Councilman Cameron, want to say something? Oh, okay. Councilman Burke. A motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.